Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Shriya Shah-Klorfine? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. Shriya Shah-Klorfine was born on January 11, 1979 in Kathmandu, Nepal. At the age of 13, her family moved to Mumbai, India. Sometime around the year 2000, Shriya went to work for a cruise line as a purser. During her time in this role, she met a piano player who worked on the ship named Bruce Klorfine, and the two became romantically involved. They eventually married and moved to Toronto, Canada, where Bruce was from. Shriya found a job with a women's clothing chain as a fashion buyer and started her own import business, which involved Indian foods and spices. At some point, Shriya decided that she wanted to reach the summit of Mount Everest, which sits on the border between Nepal, where she was born, and China. It is the tallest mountain in the world, and climbing it is considered a major and life-changing achievement. Unfortunately, for some people, the mountain represents a life-ending achievement, as the conditions on the mountain are inconsistent with survival. Given the dangerous nature of this mission, it did not make a lot of sense to people who knew Shriya. She had never climbed a mountain before and was not considered athletic. A few people tried to talk her out of this decision, including her husband, but Shriya did not listen. She started training regularly to build up her stamina. The training included going to a rock climbing gym, engaging in cardiovascular exercise, and training in martial arts. She would regularly go on an 11-mile run carrying a 44-pound backpack. This intense training lasted for 2 years. The plan was for Shriya to tackle Mount Everest during the 2012 climbing season. She contacted family members she had in Kathmandu, Nepal, to help her find a guiding company. Using a company like this is necessary to climb the mountain. Shriya was put in contact with a company called Utmost Adventure Trekking. One area where the company was definitely not the utmost was their level of experience with Mount Everest. In its brief history, the company had never actually helped a climber make it to the summit. Their inexperience was reflected in their rate structure. They charged Shriya almost $40,000, which was not as much as most of their competitors. Many people are bargain-oriented, especially in these challenging economic times, but when talking about a life-or-death trip to the summit of Mount Everest, cost-cutting probably should not be a priority. When adding equipment and travel expenses to the guide company's fee, the total cost of the journey was almost $100,000. Shriya did not have that type of money. Hoping that other people would be interested in paying for her dangerous expedition, Shriya engaged in many different fundraising activities. For example, she requested donations on a Mount Everest climbing-themed website. This included posting an image edited to look as if she was standing in front of Mount Everest. The gear that she was wearing in the photograph was rented because she could not afford to purchase it. Ultimately, trying to elicit donations for the adventure was an uphill battle, and Shriya didn't end up collecting any money at all. In her quest to climb the mountain, perhaps it was time to head for the hills, but Shriya did not accept the fact that she was between a rock and a hard place. Instead, she decided to fund her adventure by taking out a second mortgage on her house in Toronto. There was the sense that Shriya had hit rock bottom. Now moving to the timeline of the incident. Shriya made her way to Kathmandu, Nepal by March of 2012 to begin her training. The climb was to take place in mid-May. In theory, this would give her enough time to learn skills specific to mountain climbing, like ascending and descending over icy surfaces. At first, the guides at Utmost Adventure Trekking thought Shriya was very slow, but they believed she could improve sufficiently in time to make the climb. As the date of the climb grew closer, the guides were not feeling as confident. Just like the mountain, the learning curve was too steep. It seemed like an uphill battle to get Shriya to move quickly. The lead Sherpa became frustrated with Shriya and informed her that if she attempted to climb Mount Everest, she would not survive and would cause others to lose their lives as well. He strongly advised for her to avoid this activity, mostly because of the dying part. Unfortunately, Shriya did not listen to reason and insisted that she was capable of completing a fatality-free journey up and down the mountain. She was going to attempt the climb, one way or the other. Shriya and her guides hiked 18 days from Kathmandu to Base Camp 1 at Mount Everest. The elevation here is about 17,600 feet. Eventually, the group made its way to Base Camp 4, which is at 26,250 feet. On May 18, 2012, at 7:30 p.m., Shriya and the guides departed to make the final push for the summit, which is at 29,032 feet. The area on Mount Everest above 26,000 feet is referred to as the death zone because it is cold, windy, and there is not enough oxygen to sustain human life. Climbers must carry their own oxygen with them, which adds weight and bulkiness, as well as introducing another system that can fail. Making matters even more complex, about 150 people were trying to make the climb in the same 2-day window as Shriya. The weather was expected to become worse after this, so they figured it was now or never. The combination of too many people and bottlenecks along the route up the mountain caused significant delays. The owner of Utmost Adventure Trekking and the senior Sherpa for the company both left Shriya behind, probably because her pace was too slow. She was accompanied by 2 Sherpas who did not have much experience on the mountain. A good climber can make it from Base Camp 4 to the summit in between 10 to 12 hours. Shriya did not move this quickly. Rather, her pace up the mountain was painstakingly slow. As she and her 2 guides ascended the mountain overnight, Shriya would frequently sit down and rest. By morning, now on May 19, she was completely exhausted. Right before the summit, there is an area called Hillary Step. It is a 40-foot wall of rock and ice that only accommodates 1 climber at a time. The wait time at this bottleneck was 2 hours. That means 2 more hours of everybody sitting in the death zone, consuming oxygen from bottles. As Shriya was waiting her turn, the owner of the guide company came back down from the summit and saw her. He realized that her oxygen supply was almost depleted. She had consumed 8 bottles so far. The owner told Shriya to give up. It was time to go back down the mountain. Unfortunately, Shriya refused and insisted that she would reach the summit. The owner gave her 1 more oxygen bottle, number 9, and continued to descend. The 2 Sherpas with Shriya also advised her to discontinue her effort to reach the summit, but she told them that she was going one way or the other. At 2:20 p.m., Shriya made it to the summit of Mount Everest. Considering her oxygen situation, it would have been wise to immediately start the descent, but Shriya lingered at the summit until about 2:45 p.m. It's like she wanted to relish the moment of her great victory. She was on top of the world and in a state of euphoria. As Shriya and her 2 guides started to descend, they ran into strong winds, up to 80 miles per hour, as well as temperatures down to minus 40 degrees. It didn't take long before Shriya was in a desperate situation. The guides were holding her up as they descended the mountain. One Sherpa said it was like her legs were paralyzed. Shriya begged, "Please don't let me die." A few hours into the descent, Shriya ran out of oxygen. Due to exhaustion and altitude sickness, she stopped moving not long after 10 p.m., after saying her last words, "Save me." There wasn't really anything the guides could do for Shriya. They were at an elevation of 27,600 feet, which was still in the death zone. The guides left her body on the mountain and continued their descent. Several other climbers had to work around Shriya's body as they ascended and descended past that point. On the day that Shriya died, May 19, and the next day, May 20, 5 other climbers died as well. 10 days after her death, Shriya's body was retrieved from the mountain. Later, her body was cremated in Nepal. Shriya had obtained her goal of reaching the summit, but lost her life in the process. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Shriya was born in Nepal, and for that reason may have felt a special connection to Mount Everest. Furthermore, when she was 9 years old, her parents took her on a helicopter tour of the mountain, which left a positive impression on her. It's possible that she had become obsessed with the mountain. With this in mind, I find it curious that those who were close to Shriya were taken by surprise when she announced her intent to climb the mountain. This makes me wonder if she really possessed some long-standing affection for Mount Everest, or if this was more about trying to find purpose and meaning in her life, like she was trying to find some way to prove that she was special. Climbing Mount Everest is one of those achievements that can carry a significance that permeates one's sense of self. For some people, it is as remarkable as finding a dream job, graduating from college, or mastering some type of athletic skill. It is an accomplishment that no one can take away, and its value is well recognized. Item number 2, the death of Shriya has caused people to take a close look at policies maintained by the government of Nepal. Why don't they restrict the number of climbers on Mount Everest? Why don't they demand that climbers possess a certain level of documented experience? I think the bottom line for Nepal is that the climbing behavior associated with Mount Everest is a huge moneymaker. The government earns over $5 million a year just from climbing permits, which of course for some people are actually death permits, but either way, it's a big business. The tourism generated by the mountain keeps a lot of companies in Nepal running and many people employed. The regular fatalities only contribute to the mystique and intrigue surrounding the journey up the mountain, enhancing the prestige for those who successfully navigate this challenge. As fatalities increase, so does interest in reaching the summit. Item number 3, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Shriya was described as overconfident and stubborn. For some reason, she became fixated on climbing Mount Everest and became committed to doing this despite having zero mountain climbing experience. She took a second mortgage on her house in order to pay the expenses of the journey after no one would help her fund her trip. The only person excited about the journey was Shriya. The decision to borrow money put her under a tremendous amount of pressure to succeed. Perhaps she thought that if she failed, she would never get another opportunity to climb the mountain. She was going to need years just to pay off the debt from the first trip, especially considering how the interest would accumulate. By the time she reached Nepal, she had already made up her mind that she was going to stand on the summit of Mount Everest or die trying. Nothing else mattered to Shriya. Her life did not matter. Other people were expendable as well. Making it back down the mountain was not her area of focus. She was only interested in reaching the top. During the ascent, Shriya was warned repeatedly to discontinue the trip, but she remained recalcitrant. There wasn't really anything the Sherpas could do other than give the advice that Shriya rejected. If she was unwilling to cooperate, there's no way they could have physically pulled her off the mountain. It was her choice to risk death. Ultimately, Shriya was simply not in any physical condition to successfully complete the entire trip. She moved too slowly, ascending the mountain, which kept her in the death zone far too long. It should have only taken her a maximum of 12 hours to reach the summit. Instead, it took her almost 19 hours. When she made it to the summit, she was completely exhausted and running low on oxygen. She was consuming oxygen at far too high a rate, meaning her supply did not last as long as it should have. She did not have enough gas in the tank, literally and figuratively, to make it down the mountain. Realizing that she was going to die, Shriya desperately pleaded for the Sherpas to save her. She also pleaded with people who were passing her along the route. The problem is, at this elevation, it takes everything a person has to take care of themselves. There is no energy left to save other people. Just like the Sherpas did not have the ability to pull Shriya off the mountain against her will earlier, they could not pull her off if she was unable to assist herself. When she said, "Save me," she was really saying, "Save me from myself." Unfortunately, Shriya proved to be a formidable adversary to herself. She sealed her own fate. Now moving to my final thoughts. There are many different theories about what the legacy of Shriya should be. On one side, she can be thought of as a hero who conquered Mount Everest. She taught people that it's amazing what somebody can accomplish if they're willing to risk their own life and the lives of others to do it. She's an inspiration to everyone who recklessly chases their dreams, even to the point where those dreams become nightmares. On the other side, Shriya can be thought of as someone who threw her life away for no reason. She was extremely overconfident and ignored repeated warnings that she was not physically capable of surviving Mount Everest. Her legacy is a warning to others about the dangers of overconfidence, grandiosity, and arrogance. These traits can be fatal under certain conditions. Those are my thoughts on the case of Shriya Shah-Klorfine. Please put any opinions or thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.